Formula One is returning to the City of Sin, Las Vegas. But in this video, we're going to be taking a look back at Formula One's first attempt to win it big in the entertainment capital of the world. Throughout the 60s and 70s, the home of Formula One in America had been Watkins Glen, and the track was penciled in to hold the closing round of the Formula One Championship in 1981. But after the race in 1980, the track had hit financial difficulties and had to pull out of the F1 calendar and would never host an F1 event ever again. This left a space wide open in the F1 calendar, and up stepped Caesars Palace Casino, who offered their car park as a place to host the final race of the year and would make the track in just 45 days. There were some big issues with this track. Firstly, there was absolutely no grip on the tarmac, so drivers massively struggled, but also, as you may know, Las Vegas is in the middle of a desert, and it was getting quite hot. Whilst building the track, the organisers had not thought about this, and did not offer many areas of shelter for the drivers and crew, many of whom went on to get heat stroke. But it was even worse for the fans. None of the grandstands were roofed, so spectators were baked in the Nevada sun. Also, due to the layout of the circuit, you could only put grandstands on the outside of the track, meaning that for most of the race, fans couldn't actually see anything, as most of the track was in the centre of the car park. Add to this the massive concrete barriers placed along the track, which were taller than the cars, meaning for some sections you couldn't see anything at all, even if you were watching on TV.
Followed by Piquet in 8th position. Mario Andretti not so far back in 9th place. There he is.
Yes, it's all warming up. Piquet is looking very close indeed to Reutemann. I suspect that he's forming up to have a go. But that's what the team reflectors work. They're all closing up. Yes, there goes Piquet, having a stab at Reutemann down the inside. He seemed to get inside him then, but Reutemann seemed to get back online. And Andretti was going pretty wide there behind them.
Carlos Reutemann adopting the next.
The track was also anti-clockwise, with corners pulling high amounts of G-force, which would lead to what the drivers would call Las Vegas neck, with some drivers suffering extreme neck pain. Nelson Piquet was one driver who suffered from Las Vegas neck and went to Caesars Palace Hotel for a massage, but the massage left him so badly hurt and bruised that he actually ended up in hospital. The race itself was held on a Saturday in Las Vegas, which is also true of this year's Las Vegas Grand Prix. But for this year, it's because it's a night race and will mean it's a more reasonable time for European viewers. Whereas back in 1981, the reason the race was held on a Saturday was because the casino needed the car park on Sunday. The actor Paul Newman served as the race director for the event, most famous for his roles in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Colour of Money, and also being the voice of Doc Hudson in Cars. He also had a very impressive racing history, winning multiple Sports Car Club of America races and winning his class and coming second overall in the 1979 24 Hours of Le Mans. Before the race got underway, Tom Jones did a lap of the track in a chariot, although for some reason there are no videos or photos of this that can be found. To add to all of this, F1 was also going through one of its closest seasons ever. Going into the race, Carlos Reutemann in the Williams had the championship lead by 1 point over Nelson Piquet in the Brabham, and Jack Lafitte was third, 6 points off the top and still in with an outside chance of becoming world champion. The race itself would be won by the 1980 Formula One world champion Alan Jones for Williams in what would be his final race before retirement, before coming out of retirement 2 years later for Arrows in a one-off official F1 race before retiring again. Then coming out of retirement 6 months again later to drive for Team Haas. No, not that Haas, the other Haas. He would then go on to retire for the third and final time at the end of the 1986 season. Piquet would finish 5th, Lafitte 6th and Reutemann 8th, which would mean that Piquet would win the title by 1 point from Carlos Reutemann. After the race, Piquet would be in so much pain and so exhausted that he would vomit all over himself and would not be able to get out of the car. which led to this very strange shot where they want to show Piquet leaving the car as champion so they don't cut away to the podium, and we get a slow zoom out that shows the track's true car park nature whilst the Australian national anthem plays in the background to celebrate Alan Jones's victory. Formula 1 would return to the car park next year, and for the second year in a row, this was the last race of the season and the championship decider. Keke Rosberg was leading the championship, with Didier Pironi in second, but due to the injuries he sustained during the German GP weekend, he was no longer competing in the championship, which meant that Rosberg's main contender for the title was third place man John Watson, who was 9 points behind him, meaning that Watson would have to win the race and Rosberg not score any points for Watson to become champion. Now you may remember the Qatar GP of 2022, where many drivers suffered due to the high heats. To combat this happening again, for 2023 the Qatar GP will be held later in the year, so it is cooler. Now in 1981 the Caesars Palace GP was held in October, and many drivers suffered from heat exhaustion. So, for 1982, they held the race 3 weeks earlier. So in 1981, the highest temperature on the day was 76 degrees Fahrenheit, 24 degrees Celsius. And in 1982, the highest temperature on the day was 92 degrees Fahrenheit, 33 degrees Celsius. Although, between the two races, the drink system had been introduced into Formula 1 to make it a little bit safer. Another big change would be the lack of concrete barriers. These have been removed to make the track far more open, with only partial barriers being put around marshal points. Also, due to all the corners looking very similar from a TV perspective, big corner numbers were painted onto some of the corners so the TV audience would know where on the track they were looking at.
From this wonderful vantage point, that's turn 3. None of the corners have names, they just have big numbers painted on the road, and it's a very, very confusing circuit for the drivers.
Michele Alboreto would go on to win the race, meaning that Keke Rosberg would win the championship. But both F1 and Caesars Palace have been very disappointed by the small crowds and small profits from the two races thus far, so decided to end their relationship. But this was not the end of Caesars Palace track, as the next year they would start a new relationship with a 2-year contract signed with IndyCar. Even more big changes would take place to the track, turning it into what IndyCar called a modified oval, but what I think should be referred to as a modified trapezium. After this 2-year contract, it would not be raced on again. Now, if I asked you, what does Nelson Piquet and Hulk Hogan have in common? You may find it very difficult to think of anything at all, but there is one very big thing that connects these two people. That's right, is that they've both won a championship in Caesars Palace car park, as in 1993, WWE would host WrestleMania 9 in the car park of Caesars Palace, and it would see Hulk Hogan defeat the evil Japanese villain Yokozuna with his even eviler Japanese manager Mr. Fuji for the WWF World Championship. Yokozuna, who was actually born in California, and Mr. Fuji, who was actually born in Hawaii. That would be one of the last big events in Caesars Palace car park, as it would be partially sold. The part that Caesars Palace kept would be developed upon to extend their casino, and the part that was sold would be used to develop the Mirage Casino, which is one of the 3 casinos that's robbed in Ocean's 11.
Why do this? Why not do it?
From the Academy Award-winning director of Traffic and Aaron Brockovich.
Because the house takes you. Unless, when that perfect hand comes along, you bet big, and then you take the house.
Been practicing this speech, hadn't
A
you?
little bit. Did I rush it? Felt like I rushed
That was
it.
good. I liked it.
And now, after 41 years, F1 is headed back to the City of Sin with a completely brand new street track. although it's not too far from the former site of the Caesars Palace Grand Prix. Turn 13 is less than 100 metres away from where Turn 1 on the old track used to be. The new track has gotten a 3-year contract, so this will become Las Vegas' most used Formula 1 track. But when we sit down and watch the fancy new street track that incorporates the famous strip and the newly launched Sphere, just spare a thought for those drivers 40 years ago who had to drive around a car park vomiting all over themselves.